I know that a lot of you are dealing with this common symptom of PCOS, which is hormonal acne, and I know how terrible it can be and how much it can kind of crush your confidence and self-esteem. And that's why I've put together this webinar to hopefully provide some information for you all and education of what can be going on and how you can start to rebalance things. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Vivian Allred. I'm a naturopathic nutritional therapist in the UK, owner of Viva Natural Health, and also a women's health and hormone enthusiast. So I'm a long-time sufferer with PCOS symptoms and specifically PCOS acne. And it was definitely one of the worst symptoms. It was one of the last things to clear up, and it was one of the first things to start. So I've definitely been there and know what you're all going through, but I want to spread the message and the kind of motivation that it can be reduced and you can start to control things naturally and get clear skin. Firstly, I'm just going to touch on what PCOS is. This is going to be a pretty not scientific webinar, because I know that a few of you aren't in the kind of health field and are just getting introduced to what PCOS is. Maybe you've just been diagnosed, maybe you've not been diagnosed yet, but you feel like you do have some of these symptoms, so this webinar is definitely for you. And then I go over some of the common causes of PCOS acne, and there's typically 3 that are found in all the different types of PCOS. So there's, contrary to belief, there's more than one type of PCOS. It is a collection of symptoms, and each woman can have different drivers, different causes, and different combinations of symptoms that are driving the health conditions and kind of promoting the hormones to be imbalanced. So I'll cover the 4 PCOS types, the issue with conventional acne treatments, common causes of elevated androgens. So these are your male hormones that are typically imbalanced in women with PCOS, that are often in excess compared to our female sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And androgens should actually be present in females, the same as estrogen is present in males, but it's just the kind of ratio and the balance between our male and female hormones that is different, and in women with PCOS they're usually elevated. The nutritional lifestyle factors to take in order to get clear skin, non-toxic skincare recommendations, so the common conventional acne clearing solutions, Proactive, all these harsh cleansers, antibiotic creams, steroids, all of these things can really make things worse in the long run and really exacerbate the problem. And then I share 5 supplements that can be really beneficial for PCOS, and with anything that I recommend in this webinar, it's all to be informational use only, not to replace the advice of your practitioner, your doctor, and I'm not here to diagnose or treat anything. Just put that disclaimer out there. There'll be a slide on that in a second. And then finally, the lab tests to request, both from your GP, so your conventional doctor, but then also your, if you're with a holistic practitioner, nutritional therapist like myself, or functional medicine practitioner, there's more of these complex tests that are really beneficial in identifying the root causes of your acne. So here's the disclaimer. This information is intended for educational purposes only, and it's just advice, and you shouldn't replace that with what your doctor's telling you or any other protocols that you're taking. Any other medication or supplements should be discussed first. So here's a little image of kind of my acne journey, and the pictures on the left, obviously you can see that the ones that I'm struggling with acne, and that's probably when it was maybe not at the worst, but it kind of covered my whole face, and I've definitely struggled with acne more in the lower part of the face too, the jaw, chin and neck area. But this was a particularly not so great day, and I was really reluctant to take pictures because you probably know how much you want to avoid pictures, but I definitely recommend taking them, even if you just take them once and store them away and don't look at them again, and then in the future you can look back on your progress. I find that really helpful, as hard as it can be. And as you can see on the right hand side is, these were a few months ago now, but my skin's stayed pretty clear since, and I've kind of found my triggers and my main root causes, and I've continually working on addressing those, because even though my skin's clear now, if I go back to eating foods that don't work for me, stressing out, not taking my supplements, not exercising, all of the things that I'm going to discuss today, then the acne is going to come straight back. And I feel the same with PCOS. You can definitely reverse your symptoms. I wouldn't say that you can cure PCOS, because again, if you the next day went back to your old diet and old lifestyle patterns, then these symptoms are going to come straight back, because you've got that genetic predisposition. But we know that genetics don't control everything. It's really the lifestyle and environment that activates or deactivates the release of those genetic mutations. So my acne really started at age 17, 18, which is later than most people, and I avoided all the kind of puberty and childhood acne. I was really lucky. I always had clear, amazing skin. I used to always get compliments on it, and people used to say, "Oh, you never get spots, like you're so lucky." And I was kind of really happy about that. And then it hit me all at once at age 17, and I always joke that I kind of made up for the years that I didn't have it during these last few years. And for me, my acne and my PCOS symptoms kind of all started at once, and it was really triggered by stressful way of living. So I was under eating, under fueling my body, wasn't nourishing it with enough food to sustain the amount of exercise I was doing. And it was quite intense exercise. I was trying to lose weight. I wasn't overweight to begin with, but you probably know, like, trying to tone up and lose weight and lose that extra bit of belly fat. So I joined the gym and started really loving the results I was getting, and then kind of took it too far. And I was doing 2 hours of exercise every single day and fueling on a plain chicken salad and cereal, low fat, low calorie chocolate bars and snack bars, things like that. And at the start I was feeling great, because I cut out a lot of the rubbish and the takeaways and crisp that I was eating, but I wasn't replacing that with anything nutrient dense. I was kind of just restricting and eliminating, not in like an eating disorder way, but more along the lines of orthorexia, so over exercising and not eating foods that contain healthy fats. And I was kind of just going from the women's health magazine and popular diet magazines that recommend like chicken, brown rice, broccoli, no fat, no oils, no nuts and seeds, things like that. And at first, like I say, I felt a bit better and I was losing weight and getting compliments. And then around 4 months in, maybe 6 months in, things started to go south. So my period stopped, my face broke out in cystic acne, my hair started falling out rapidly, and I felt terrible. And I went to my GP and I said, I've had a regular period since I started, and now it's just disappeared. And he was saying, oh, just wait and see what happens. It could just be a fluke and it could come back soon. So I gave it a couple more months and still nothing. My skin was getting worse, my hair was worse. So I went back and he recommended that I go for an ultrasound to kind of test for something known as polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I'd never really heard of that before, but after Googling it, I found that it was linked to infertility and maybe heart disease and diabetes risk in the future. And I was just so scared and didn't know what to do. And I've always wanted children, so that was a real scare for me. So his recommendation was to go on the pill, and my ultrasound did come back with polycystic ovaries, and I was therefore put on the pill. And if you want to learn more about the whole story after that, you can listen to my podcast, which is Hormones in Harmony, and this is linked at the end of the presentation. And my very first episode was all about my health journey. So if you want to learn all about kind of my journey with hormonal birth control, which, side note, wasn't great, and my gut problems, all of that, you can definitely give that a listen. It's a 30-minute podcast. And yeah, if I don't want to go into all that because I'll be here forever. So yeah, my skin cleared up on the pill eventually, and then when I came off, it all came back. And other contributing factors like my poor gut health, nutrient deficiencies, stress, hormone imbalances, all continue to drive my cystic acne. And only over the past year or so have I been able to really manage things and get clear skin, because I've addressed things at a cellular level, and I finally rebalanced all of the root causes and drivers in diet and lifestyle that I needed to. So yeah, as you can see, it's pretty, I've wrote at the bottom, pretty consistent for around 6 years, and many contributing factors. So to start off, what is PCOS? So either you have a diagnosis, you don't know what it is, or you're not sure if you have it, you're having some like hormonal acne, but you're not sure what's causing it. So PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's actually the most common endocrine disorder of women in reproductive years. So endocrine disorders are basically hormonal imbalances. So it's the most common one in women before menopause and after menstruation begins, so puberty. And it affects either between 1 in 5, it's thought, or around 1 in 10 women. So it's pretty likely that someone you know or love is struggling with this, maybe knowingly or unknowingly. And in general kind of description, it's an imbalance between the male and female hormones. And hopefully it's going to be renamed to something more suitable, like reproductive metabolic disorder, because the name polycystic ovarian syndrome kind of makes it seem like the cysts on the ovaries are like growths or tumours that are causing all of these problems. However, that's not the case. It's a big myth that the cysts on the ovaries have to be present. They don't. And it's not often discussed that the cysts on the ovaries are actually just undeveloped eggs and undeveloped follicles because of anovulation. So we're not ovulating, and therefore these mini tiny eggs that we all have on our ovaries aren't being released properly, and they get halted, and that's what gives the kind of string of pearls appearance when you have an ultrasound. And I was going to say something, but I forgot. And you don't have to have cysts on the ovaries to have PCOS. So at the bottom of the page, you can see the Rotterdam criteria. You have to have 2 out of 3 of these things to have a diagnosis of PCOS. So number 1 is cystic appearance of the ovaries on ultrasound. So I had that, so check. Elevated androgens. This can either be through physical signs, so hair loss, acne, hair growth on the body, or elevated levels of androgens, which are your male hormones, in blood tests. And finally, irregular menstrual cycles. So this could be you don't have a menstrual cycle, it's stopped. It could be really long, so up to 40, 50 days long, or you could not be ovulating and not releasing an egg. And the problem is with the criteria that you need to be diagnosed, these 3 symptoms can be linked to other problems too. So I think it needs to be more strict, and conditions like hypothyroidism, hypothalamic amenorrhea, adrenal problems can all display with these symptoms, and people can commonly get misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed, given the wrong diagnosis, because, like I said, these symptoms can be related to a ton of other conditions. Plus, you can have both thyroid issues or hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is lack of period due to stress. You can have PCOS and that together, and I think that's what I had. And yeah, you don't have to have the cystic appearance. That's a big thing. You could take a random woman off the street, and there's 25% likelihood that she has this appearance on an ultrasound, even though she doesn't have any hormonal imbalances. It could be that she's not ovulated yet, so you're catching it at the wrong time when you do the ultrasound, or it could be that she's not ovulated at all that month for whatever reason. So here are some of the common symptoms of PCOS. Again, PCOS is a syndrome, so it's a collection of symptoms. These can be acne, male pattern hair loss, so that's going to be mainly at the hairline of the head, where you'd see like an older male recede their hairline, but it could also be all over, just thinning. Hirsutism, which is hair growth in kind of male pattern places, so the kind of beard area, the chest, the nipples, underneath the belly button, and on your glutes and thighs. Apple-shaped obesity, we tend to store the majority of our weight around our abdomen, and this is likely due to high insulin levels. So that belly fat, there's a lot of cortisol and insulin receptors in there, so when these things are high, we kind of pack all of the weight around the midsection, kind of that spur tire, I hate that term, but spur tire kind of look, and it can be really hard to lose weight. Some people lose weight all over the body, and then they're just left with this belly fat. And belly fat's actually one of the worst types of fat to have on the body, because it's surrounding the internal organs, and it's known as this visceral fat. And the organs need that space to receive nutrients, and it can be very inflammatory because fat is an endocrine organ in itself, meaning that fat tissue isn't just inert, it doesn't just sit there and look bad, it actually releases hormones, releases inflammation and negative compounds into the body. And fat tissue itself can also produce estrogen, so if we're estrogen dominant, then that can definitely exacerbate things. Amenorrhea, so lack of periods, is another symptom, or that just irregularity in the menstrual cycle. So you're not ovulating, your cycles are all over the place every month, or they're super long. Skin tags and acanthosis nigricans, so that would be skin tags, like people get them around the eyes or under the armpits in creases, and the thick brown darkened skin patches that are kind of velvety to the touch. So like I mentioned before, there's not just one PCOS type, there are actually 4 different types. You can be in more than one camp at a time as well. I believe that I've been through kind of all of these at one point or another, so they can definitely mix and match them and have different drivers. The first type and the most popular, well-known type is the insulin-resistant type, that's approximately occurring in around 70% of PCOS women to certain degrees as well. So there's women who really struggle with their weight and blood sugar and insulin production and maybe obese. However, there's lean women who can still suffer with insulin resistance, and it just means that the body cannot process carbohydrates and glucose effectively. And what happens when we consume glucose, so carbohydrates or sugars from food, is this elevates the levels of blood sugar in our bloodstream. And in order to get that into the cells, we need insulin to kind of carry it in there and let it into the cells to be used for energy. In PCOS, or insulin-resistant PCOS, what happens is this process is happening too frequently, or the insulin becomes resistant. The cells become resistant to insulin, sorry. So when the insulin tries to take glucose into the cell from the bloodstream, then that cell's resistant and it won't let it through. So what happens is the cell becomes basically starving for energy, whereas the bloodstream is really high in blood glucose, and that can lead the pancreas to pump out more insulin to try and get it in there, because it doesn't know why it's not being fed. So the insulin is being pumped out at higher amounts from the pancreas. That can lead to the ovaries to produce testosterone. Insulin makes the ovaries produce testosterone in women with PCOS. The next type of PCOS is going to be an adrenal stress-driven type. What happens is the adrenal glands also produce androgens, so these male hormones. It's not just the ovaries. These are commonly the ovaries are commonly blamed for the production of androgens, but the adrenal glands produce 50% of the androgens too, so they definitely need to be taken into consideration. And a lot of women can have adrenal stress on its own without the insulin resistant, but like I mentioned, you can have both at the same time too. Post-pill PCOS, this is usually a temporary state that occurs after you stop taking hormonal birth control pills. What happens is a lot of these pills are anti-androgenic, and they kind of soak up all the androgens in the body, hence why it clears our skin and can make our PCOS symptoms better. because it acts as a sponge and soaks up all the androgens and kind of shuts down your androgen production in the body. However, when you stop taking that, your body learns how to make testosterone and androgens again, and therefore it can just go crazy and start to pump out a lot of male hormones, resulting in this PCOS kind of appearance. And it can also show similar symptoms to PCOS in general. So when you come off the pill, you might gain weight, your periods might not come back, you might have hair loss, and you might have acne, and therefore all of these look really like PCOS, but it could be that it's just a temporary state. And if you're diagnosed with PCOS after stopping the birth control pill, when previously you've never had any issues like that, then this could be a sign that it's not true PCOS, it's just kind of this temporary hormone imbalance. The fourth type is an inflammatory or hidden cause of PCOS. And there are tons of different things that can result in hormone imbalances like PCOS or drive them. The main ones being hypothyroidism, environmental toxin exposure, and poor gut health. So why do we get PCOS acne? You might be thinking this all the time. Why me? Why me? Why is this happening? Why do I have all these symptoms when my friends have clear skin and I never had to struggle with it in the past? So why is it so bad now? So what happens is these male hormones in a female body really start to overproduce sebum. And sebum's kind of that greasy, waxy substance in our skin that can cause oiliness and can lead to pore clogging and inflammation. So the bacteria that's kind of responsible for acne too is known as P. acnes. I'll not try and pronounce that full name, but this can lead to skin cell proliferation, inflammation in the skin, and can alter pH balance. And the reason that acne is mainly, it's not always, but located in the lower part of the face in PCOS or on the chest or back is because there are a lot more androgen receptors in this area. But definitely women with PCOS can suffer with acne all over the face. It doesn't have to just be in that area, but that is the most common. And as I mentioned, elevated androgens and that male to female hormone imbalance is the main cause of PCOS symptoms. But why do we have an imbalance of these male hormones? Why are they so high? The first one would be insulin resistance. And like I mentioned, 70% of women with PCOS have some degree of insulin resistance. And what happens is these elevated insulin levels that are being pumped out by the pancreas, these stimulate some cells in the ovaries known as the theca cells to produce testosterone. This is what blocks ovulation and can therefore inhibit progesterone production and can lead to all of the nasty symptoms that we have to deal with. The next cause of elevated androgens is going to be inflammation in general. And the reason that inflammation can drive acne is because inflammation raises our blood sugar, it raises our insulin levels and can therefore promote insulin resistance. So they're really tied together. Inflammation can produce cortisol and lead to cortisol production from the adrenal glands. And this can itself, when cortisol is released, so this stress hormone from the adrenal glands, this can also cause the adrenals to pump out androgens too, so testosterone, DHEAS. And lastly, inflammation can upregulate the enzyme 5-alpha reductase that converts testosterone into a more potent form known as dihydrotestosterone, DHT. The final cause of elevated androgens is going to be that stress and high cortisol because, like I mentioned, when the adrenal glands are pumping out stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, they can also pump out the DHEA, the DHEAS and the testosterone. Plus, cortisol can upregulate sebum production in the skin, therefore there's more chance of the bacteria and the oils kind of inflaming and causing those cysts and these spots to appear. Plus, stress again promotes our blood sugar and insulin levels and can lead to insulin resistance. And all of these things actually, when I mentioned about the 5-alpha reductase enzyme, these all upregulate the enzyme. so that our testosterone's converted into a more potent form. And you may have been tested in your blood for testosterone or androgens and been told that they're normal. And what could be happening is your normal levels, that may be true, however, they're going down the wrong pathways. And I'll talk about this towards the end when I discuss some functional lab tests to determine this. But if you're told that your levels are normal, they could be going down this more potent pathway when they're being excreted from the body. So what are the goals when it comes to PCOS acne? My goals are to initially determine your PCOS type. This can be done through kind of symptom history and how your symptoms first developed. That's a really important step. So maybe write down your timeline, write down all the things that have happened, and this can help you paint a picture as to what your PCOS drivers and root causes are. You can also use lab testing, both functional and conventional, to check your levels of certain hormones, check for insulin resistance. But I found the combination of lab testing and just symptomatic, looking at your symptoms is going to be the best way to determine your types, and you can have more than one type. The second step is to reverse insulin resistance if it's present. The third one is to regain ovulation and your menstrual cycle, because the main problem with PCOS is that we're not ovulating, and therefore we can't get pregnant and we can't produce that wonderful progesterone hormone. And progesterone is naturally anti-androgenic, so it helps to balance our testosterone and estrogen levels in the body. It really regulates things. It's also our anti-PMS, anti-anxiety, anti-inflammatory hormone. So if we're not ovulating, we're not being exposed to this wonderful hormone in the second part of our cycle. And you can only produce progesterone when we ovulate, because when we release an egg from the sac that's left over becomes a gland that produces this hormone. Therefore, if we don't ovulate or the gland isn't strong enough for whatever reason, then we can't experience the benefits from progesterone. The fourth goal of mine is to promote an anti-inflammatory environment. So this encompasses your mindset, it encompasses your relationships, your diet and your lifestyle, your movement. All of these things need to be focused on. It's not just all about diet, but diet is super important. You also want to restore possible nutrient deficiencies, especially if you've been on the birth control pill or you've been on a poor diet for the majority of your life. This is really important because nutrient deficiencies can drive insulin resistance, they can drive acne, and they can drive inflammation. I'll get onto the more specifics of what these nutrients are later in the presentation. And finally, it's just to rebalance your male and female hormone ratio. We don't want to shut down testosterone completely because we're going to end up with low libido. We're not going to be able to burn body fat and gain muscle. We're going to be shy and depressed and have low mood and energy. We need testosterone, but too much is a problem. Same with estrogen. We need estrogen. Estrogen's amazing for women. Too much can cause the breast tenderness, the PMS, the heavy, crampy, clotted periods, and low levels can cause low libido, vaginal dryness, joint pain, hair loss. So everything in the body is in balance, and we don't want to completely shut things down. We want to promote a natural equilibrium, which is a balance in the body. So nutrition for PCOS acne. Food really is medicine, in my opinion, and it's the most important thing that we do every single day. Every meal that we eat, we have a chance to promote or reduce the impact of disease in the body. So we can promote inflammation or we can promote anti-inflammatory aspects to the body. So what is an anti-inflammatory diet? It's going to be different for everyone because we're all bio-individual. However, there's some commonalities between all of these diet camps that you hear. And that's going to be just removing the pro-inflammatory foods. So these are going to be things like gluten found in wheat, dairy products, and also refined sugar. The problem is with these foods is they can be really inflammatory, and they're the most common food sensitivities and allergens in the diet. And even though you might not feel like you have an allergy or an intolerance to these foods, so when you eat milk, when you eat bread or milk, you don't feel like you have diarrhea or pain straight away, then you might not think that you have a problem. But if you are constantly eating these foods, you might just have a low-grade inflammation. It doesn't have to be immediately. Some of these things can occur up to 3-4 days after eating these foods. And if you're eating these things every day, then your body's just going to be in constant stress. And we know that what stress does to our hormones. And it's also important to try and find your individual food sensitivities. This can be done through an elimination diet. I'll get onto that in a moment. But you could be eating the best diet in the world, but certain foods may not work for your body. And I've had experience with this too, with my personal food intolerance being histamine-rich foods. And this is for a combination of reasons, so genetics and just certain things going on in my body at the moment. But histamine-rich foods are promoted as the best things to eat for gut health. So bone broth, collagen, avocados, and all of these things are really inflammatory to my body at a certain amount. So I really need to limit these things, because when I consume them, I break out in cystic acne, I get anxiety, and I get digestive issues. I have a whole post on my skin and histamine rich foods and how I cleared my skin a lot by reducing my intake of these things. So you can check that out on my blog as well. And things like soy or nuts, they could be contributing, and I wouldn't be too stressed about looking into these things until you've just cleaned up your diet completely. Only then should you go into the more specifics, because if you just cut everything out your diet and you're left with 5 foods, but you're still stressed out your mind and not sleeping, then you're just going to be in a vicious cycle. You know, you're just going to make things worse in the long run, because we need these nutrients and fiber and a varied diet to feed our gut microbiome and to get a load of different nutrients from different food in our diet. Anti-inflammatory foods are going to be things like herbs and spices, so garlic, turmeric, ginger, oregano. All of these things have been used for centuries in cooking. However, we've kind of gotten away from those things when we're making food and recipes. Just try and add in more turmeric to your meals, to your vegetables when you're cooking them. Things like cinnamon to smoothies or drinks. These can be really simple ways to increase your antioxidant intake. Cinnamon in particular is really beneficial for women with PCOS. This is because it helps to stabilize our blood sugar levels, and it can promote insulin sensitivity. So when I was talking about the glucose not being able to get into the cell and kind of building up in the bloodstream, cinnamon can actually help in that process. And you have to make sure it's Ceylon cinnamon, so Ceylon, not cassia, because cassia is more inflammatory and not as beneficial in the blood glucose regulation. Other anti-inflammatory foods are going to be something like oily fish. So your salmon, mackerel, sardines, herring, trout, all of these oily cold water fish contain omega-3 fats. And omega-3s are amazing at reducing inflammation, promoting insulin sensitivity, promoting adiponectin levels in the body, and also just helping with your blood sugar and reducing acne, hair loss, all of those symptoms. Healthy fats should be consumed at every single meal throughout the day. These help to stabilize the blood sugar levels. They're going to be things like avocado, maybe not for me, but for other people, they're totally fine and beneficial. Things like coconut products, coconut oil, coconut butter, coconut yogurts, grass-fed ghee, so the clarified butter. Some people can tolerate conventional butter, but I only recommend that once they've eliminated it for 30 to 60 days to check if they have an intolerance. But otherwise, butter like Kerrygold butter from really high quality animals is very good. Nuts and seeds, so walnuts, chia seeds, hemp seeds, try and include these every single day. And obviously green leafy vegetables, everyone agrees that these are good for us. So kale, cabbage, Swiss chard, spinach, and organic berries. So instead of going for the high glycemic fruits like pineapples, bananas, these can really impact our blood sugar levels and drive the sebum production and inflammation within the skin. So opting for organic berries, you can get them frozen, add them to smoothies or on the side of your meals. And these are low glycemic, really rich in fibre and really rich in antioxidants too. Focus on just whole real foods basically. So I like to recommend a paleo template or an elimination diet to begin with, just to calm things down. Obviously you can expand your diet in the future when you found out what your personal triggers are, but starting with a diet filled with plants initially, so at least 50% of your plate is filled with vegetables, and then you can add in some healthy fats like I mentioned, and then your proteins are going to be meat, fish, eggs, and then things like nuts and seeds too. And yeah, just stick with natural foods. Anything that's kind of man-made or packaged, even these kind of paleo treats that are date balls and all these raw cakes, these are still high in a lot of refined sugars that we want to be avoiding, especially at the start where we're trying to manage our symptoms. The next step is to improve insulin sensitivity. So this is going to be the most beneficial for the women struggling with insulin resistance, but it can't hurt anyone. Any of these recommendations are going to be beneficial to pretty much all of the types. The first way to do this is to stabilize your blood sugar levels, because when we've got a ton of glucose coming in through our diet, then that's going to promote insulin release. So we want to make sure our blood sugar levels are slowly up and down throughout the day rather than big spikes and crashes. And I'll come on to a slide of that next and how it can be harmful to the body. And if you are insulin resistant, you don't have to go keto, you don't have to go zero carb at all. It can be a therapeutic, helpful diet, but I want you to start off with the basics first. So a lot of women come to me asking, oh, what supplement shall I take for this? What diet? Shall I go keto? Shall I go vegan? Shall I go raw foods? And I just need to stop them and tell them, make sure you're doing all of these things that I'm going to address first, and then we'll consider what's right for you. And the best way to do this is to consume protein, fat and fibre each meal, and try and space your meals 4 to 6 hours apart if you can. There's some people struggling with severe blood sugar dysregulation, meaning that they can't go that long without eating at the start, or they experience blood sugar crashes, or they just have adrenal stress so they can't go that long at the moment. If you do feel hungry within the 4 to 6 hours, that may be a sign that you're not actually eating enough. So go back to the meal before, make sure you have a large meal, don't restrict your meals in any way. Just have a big portion of protein, fat and fibre, and this fibre can incorporate some carbohydrates, but stick mainly to the low glycemic, non-starchy vegetables. And if you are insulin resistant, you can time your carbohydrate intake mainly around exercise. This is so that you make sure that your body is utilising these carbohydrates effectively and burning them off. Either before exercise, you kind of load up on these carbohydrates like sweet potatoes, gluten-free bread, quinoa, beans, lentils, and then while you're exercising, like strength training, you're making sure that you're burning these things off. Again, post-exercise as well, this can be a great time to replace and restore your glycogen stores. Next one would be to avoid snacking, because when I mentioned when you eat, especially foods that contain carbohydrates, this is going to stimulate our insulin production, and we want to avoid this if we're dealing with PCOS, especially the insulin resistant type. But I don't believe that snacking is great for anyone anyway, so try to avoid that. We've kind of been taught that snacking is going to keep our metabolism going, and it is often just the food industry that's kind of promoting this snacking in modern lifestyle. We used to just eat 2 to 3 meals a day and be fine with that, but now we've been taught that we need snacks and 100-calorie packs of biscuits to keep us going and cereal bars, but we definitely don't, because not only will that affect our insulin and blood sugar, it's also going to affect our digestion, because if we haven't yet processed breakfast in our guts and we add on a snack and then it's lunch 2 hours later and then a mid-afternoon snack 2 hours later, that's really likely that things are going to get backed up, and that can drive inflammation within the body, and this needs to be avoided, especially if you've got digestive issues. That's like adding fuel to the fire. So I've popped on this one, you may need one snack if you can't go that long between eating. This can be a balanced snack like some berries, 2 squares of dark chocolate and a handful of nuts, or some soft-boiled eggs and avocado, and some walnuts, something like that. But make sure it is balanced still, containing a protein source, a fibre source and a fat source. Daily exercise, this can also help to improve insulin sensitivity. The reason is that exercise helps our body to utilise our blood sugar more effectively, and it also helps your body to uptake glucose into the cells without the need for insulin. This is really important if you've got this insulin resistant type. Your body can utilise those sugars without the need for insulin. So your kind of muscles soak up the excess glucose in the bloodstream. I recommend the majority of your training to be a combination of walking. So after walking, after eating your meals, walking for 10 to 15 minutes. This can really help your body to process the food a lot better, and the carbohydrates and sugars. So if you do contain a carbohydrate containing meal, say a full sweet potato or a serving of carbohydrates, something like that, if you go out and walk, this can really work to blunt the insulin response. Overtraining isn't great either. So I'm not telling you to go out there and exercise intensely every single day, because that stress can definitely promote inflammation and promote elevated blood sugar and stress within the body. And these are all the common drivers of PCOS. So definitely moderate amounts, like 3 to 5 times a week, combination of strength training, walking, and also HIIT sessions. So HIIT is high intensity interval training. This is really helpful for those with insulin resistant type PCOS, but not necessarily the adrenal stress type, because it is really intense. It occurs for 15 to 20 minutes approximately, and it can help to sensitize the body to insulin a lot better and burn that body fat. But with someone with adrenal PCOS, this can just be too much, and they should stick to more restorative forms of exercise like yoga, Pilates, and walking, stretching, swimming, those types of things. Strength training is super important for women in general, but no one more than a woman with PCOS, for the reason of the muscle and blood glucose metabolism. And we're not going to get bulky, don't worry, ladies. Even though we have extra levels of testosterone in us, we haven't got anywhere near the amount that men do, and men work really, really, really hard to build muscle. So if you're scared of weight training, weightlifting, lifting heavy things because you think that you're going to get bulky and manly, then that's just not going to happen. It's going to make you burn body fat. It's going to give you that toned look that you're after, and that lean body, that lean muscle that helps to kind of rev up our metabolism and keep us metabolically healthy. And finally, sleep. One night of poor quality sleep and sleep deprivation leads to an increase of 33% of insulin resistance. Imagine if you're doing that for 1 to 10 years, then you're just going to be screwed basically. You could be eating the best diet in the world, but if you're not sleeping, then your body's not going to be utilizing your body fat for energy, and it's going to just be storing everything. And you've all probably had the experience of having a bad night's sleep. The next day, you don't want to exercise, you don't want to eat healthy, you're not craving a salad, you're craving chocolate and crisp and takeaways, because your brain needs that instant fuel rather than nourishing fuel, and you're not going to be in the mood to make healthy choices throughout the day. I like to recommend people being in bed for 10 p.m. Lights out, not on your phone, not watching TV, just shutting everything down around 8 or 9 p.m. and getting in bed and just trying to relax, maybe journaling for 5 to 10 minutes to wind down. But the optimal time to be asleep is 10 p.m. The hours between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. are known as the golden hours, because this is the time that our body's really regenerating and in this deep restorative sleep. Therefore, if we're missing out, we're only going to bed at 12, we're only getting 2 hours of that, and it's believed that these hours are actually worth double. And yeah, it's really important to work with our natural light and dark cycles, so our circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm has a massive influence on our reproductive health and our hormones as women. This is how we start puberty. The kind of earth and the moon and the light and dark cycles signal to our body when it's time to start puberty, it's time to go into menopause, and it's time to have our menstrual cycle each month. It's all determined by light and dark and rhythms. This is why many women have a cycle that's connected to the lunar cycle, so the moons. A lot of women ovulate on the full moon and menstruate on the new moon, or vice versa. So it is really important to pay attention to and start to address, not just for hormones, but for our whole body has clock genes that are really regulated by these cycles. So it's something to start paying attention to. The best way to do this is first thing in the morning is expose your eyes and your body to bright natural light. You just open up your curtains wide and expose your eyes to sunlight. However, if it's somewhere you live that's not sunny or it's in the winter, it's still going to help somewhat, but you can also buy a light therapy lamp that helps to give you that lux, light signals to the eyes. These are used for seasonal depression, things like that, to really help your body to produce healthy amounts of cortisol in the morning and to signal to your body that it's daytime and time to be awake and start to produce these hormones that we need. Similarly, in the evening, it's going to be the opposite. So you want to avoid lights as much as possible, bright lighting in your rooms. You can invest in some blue light blocking glasses. I'm wearing some now. These are daytime ones, so they've got kind of a reflective amber coloured tint that stops the bright lights from when I'm on my screens, because I get headaches too. So the ones that I use for evenings are really orange coloured ones, and I pop them on at 7 or 8 p.m. and this helps to block my eyes from the blue light from screens or just in my home, and this helps the body to produce more melatonin, our sleep hormone, because the blue light shining in our eyes is similar to the sunlight, so our body still thinks it's daytime and is still producing cortisol when it should be producing melatonin, our main sleep hormone and one of our main antioxidants too. So here's what's happening with our blood sugar levels. When I was saying that the too high can be dangerous and too low can be dangerous too, we really want to be in the sweet spot in the middle. And in red, I've kind of labelled some of the things that can spike our blood sugar and promote insulin resistance. So things like caffeine, we want to be swapping that for herbal teas. And we shouldn't be consuming things like coffee in the morning, first thing on an empty stomach. That's probably one of the worst things that you can do for your adrenal health and your hormone health if you have PCOS. So if you are going to have caffeine, I would have 1 or 2 cups maximum per day before 12 p.m. and after eating a meal. Excess carbs and sugars, this isn't always the quote bad carbohydrates and white refined flour and bread and pasta. It can also be excess healthy carbs, or excess sweet potatoes, dates and fruit juices. Even though they're actually healthy foods, as women with PCOS, we can have a different tolerance, and we have to kind of find our sweet spot when it comes to carbohydrates. And this is different for everyone, and it all depends on certain blood levels, how you feel after eating. So are you feel like you're falling asleep, or are you getting shaky or jittery? Do you feel like you could take a nap after eating some carbohydrates? These are all signs that your blood sugar's out of whack. You can also invest in a glucometer. So this is a blood sugar reading device you can get on Amazon, and you can test your fasting blood glucose levels instead of keep going to the doctor to see where they're at. Ideally, they should be less than 5. And after eating, you want to check your blood sugar 1 hour and 2 hour post eating to see if it's spiking up. And we don't want it higher than, say, 6 or 6.5 ideally. We want it to kind of drop back down to around 5, 4 or 5 after eating those types of foods. If it stays high or you have high fasting glucose levels, this is an imbalance in the body that should be addressed. Stress can also spike our blood sugar levels, because It helps to mobilize glucose in the body for when we're in that fight or flight mode. We need our body to pump out a lot of sugars from stored glycogen so that we have energy to run from a lion or a saber-toothed tiger if needed. So that it's not just the acute stress that we get when a car pulls in front of us or we step out in the road and the cars come in. It's that low-grade chronic stress that's a problem as well. And finally, lack of sleep. I've mentioned that it can affect our cravings, our food choices, and directly impacts our insulin sensitivity. So now on to lifestyle for PCOS acne. The first thing you want to do is love your liver. The liver has so many roles in the body, but it's directly connected to our hormones because it helps to process and break down our hormones. And when we've not got enough nutrients in the diet, this can really be effective. The liver is a really it requires a lot of nutrients to function optimally. If we're eating a poor diet, if we're not absorbing these things, and just the modern lifestyle, it means that we're depleting more of these nutrients. So it could be that you need to supplement with some of these nutrients. So again, a nutrient-dense diet is really important, especially the nutrients like amino acids. So high quality protein is going to provide amino acids. And often this is one of the problems I see with a vegan diet, is that we're not getting the full spectrum of amino acids that we can get in animal products. And therefore we're not getting all the amino acids needed for each phase of the detoxification process in phase 2. The best types of proteins, in my opinion, are going to be eggs, if you can tolerate them. Some people find that they are an acne trigger, so you may need to eliminate them for 1 to 2 months at the start, and then reintroduce the yolk first and then the egg whites, because that's the most allergenic part. But if you can tolerate eggs, then definitely add them to your breakfasts or lunches, because they're a great source of protein and healthy fats. Other meats are going to be obviously chicken, lamb, beef, and organ meats are really helpful too. You can also get a high quality protein powder if you struggle to get a range of different animal products in your diet. You can get high quality pea or hemp protein powder, or ones made from beef, or they don't taste like beef, they're just made from beef protein. And you can also get collagen protein powder too. B vitamins are really important for phase 1 and phase 2 of liver detoxification. Your animal products are going to be the most rich in B vitamins, and also vegetables like green leafy veg are rich in B vitamins too. Sulphur is really important for detoxification of hormones, especially estrogen. So sulphurous foods are going to be onions, leeks, garlic. Certain amino acids found in meats again are rich in sulfur amino acids like methionine. And I'm not promoting like a carnivore meat diet. I believe that meat should be like a condiment in the diet. So have your whole plate filled with veggies and healthy fat and fiber, and then at the side have a small portion, like a deck of cards side portion of fish, meat, organ meats. And I think that's the best way to go about it. And make sure that the quality of the meat is really high too, because we want to be eating healthy animals, not sick animals. And some of the studies that are linked animal protein to cancers and heart disease and all of these scary things aren't testing for organic, grass-fed, wild meat and fish. They're looking at the processed, industrialized animals. So that's a big difference. And conventionally raised non-organic meats can be filled with inflammatory compounds and less nutrients than the organic types too. Plus phytonutrients are really beneficial. They're going to be found in your vegetables and fruit mainly, and herbs and spices too. And I mentioned before about caffeine spiking blood glucose levels and how to avoid it, how to drink it like strategically if you do want to consume coffee, because coffee does have some antioxidant benefits, but I find, especially at the start, women with PCOS should avoid it, especially if they've got acne, because it is quite stimulating. I recommend swapping it for herbal teas, so 3 to 4 cups a day is a good place to be. And the best types for liver health, PCOS and acne are going to be nettle. It's really anti-inflammatory and it's a diuretic, so it helps to kind of flush toxins out the body. Same with dandelion, that's really beneficial for bile flow, which is one of our digestive enzymes that helps to cleanse the colon and break down fat-soluble nutrients from our diet. Burdock root's really great for the liver too, as is fennel, and especially if you've got digestive issues and bloating and gas, fennel can be really helpful. Sweating's really important, so getting that exercise in, obviously not pushing yourself too hard that you stress your body out, but getting a good sweat session in a couple of times a week, either through exercise, saunas, that can be infrared sauna or a heat sauna. They're great for the skin because we need to flush out toxins from our body, and if it's not coming out through the bowels or the urine, it's going to come out through the skin. It's going to find a different way out the body, and that's why inflammation internally can be shown on the outside, because the whole body's connected. It's not just about a lack of antibiotic cream or a deficiency in proactive cream that's the problem. It's something stemming from internal that's coming out through the skin and trying to show us that something's happening inside. And finally, the last way that you can love upon your liver is to go organic with your skincare, with your animal products that you consume, and with your produce especially. And the resources that I like to recommend when trying to find the best organic foods to go for is the Environmental Working Group, so EWG. They have tons of information on the website about organic, non-organic, and what to look for in terms of food and skincare. So they have a list known as the Dirty Dozen list, which is the 12 fruit or veg that have the most pesticide residue on them that year. That it comes a new one every year, so you can go on the website and find out what it is in your country. And these are the foods that you should be buying organic. And they also have a clean 15 list, and these are the 15 fruit and veg that are least sprayed. And you usually find that these are the ones with thick coatings on, like bananas or pineapples or avocados, and you can usually get away with them non-organic, so you can save money in that aspect. Plus, they have an app called Think Dirty, which is an assessment of the toxicity levels of your skincare products and personal care products. So it has a function that you can take a picture of the barcode and it'll give you a toxicity rating between 1 and 10, and you want to be aiming to keep your products around less than a 3 score. And this is because a lot of the chemicals found in conventional skincare products, beauty products, makeup, are endocrine disruptors, meaning that they enter our body through our skin, and these can disrupt the levels of estrogen within the body and throw off our female hormones. And this is why it's so important to avoid these things, not just for women in general, but women with PCOS have been shown to have higher levels of these endocrine disruptors in our blood already. It may be that we can't detoxify them properly, or we just accumulate them quicker. Therefore, women with PCOS should really avoid the conventional products that you can get on the high street or in in beauty stores like Sephora and makeup shops. And I'm going to come on to specific non-toxic skincare products later on in the presentation, and they are getting better with the quality and the effectiveness of new products on the market. Maybe 10 years ago it would have been so hard to find non-toxic deodorants and skincare and moisturizer, but luckily we have a lot of new brands coming out and about with some really great effective products. And I'm going to share with you some of the basic really clean natural products that I love to use that help to keep my skin clean, because although acne is usually stemming from internal, we can do things topically to reduce inflammation and promote skin health. Next is to improve your gut health. The gut and the liver are really connected, so if there's kind of a back up in either, it can have a knock-on effect, and they are really close to each other in the body. So any toxicity or inflammation within one organ is going to impact the next one, so it's important to look at them both at the same time. The first thing to do is to eat mindfully. This means that you shouldn't be eating on the go, watching telly or scrolling on your phone. You shouldn't be wolfing things down in 5 minutes. You need to be in a relaxed, calm environment. Take your time while eating, so 15, 30 minutes at least to eat your meals, and make sure you are chewing your food until it's liquidized. This is because our gut doesn't have teeth. What we swallow, if it's in whole chunks, this gives the gut more work to do, and we want to take the load off our gut so that our body has more resources and energy to address our hormone imbalance and to give us good skin. Because if our gut's constantly working on breaking down a ton of food, a lot of energy goes into that, and we can kind of give it a break by doing more in our mouth and chewing things right down and making sure we eat mindfully. The next thing would be to add in some sort of probiotic, either supplement or food, because probiotics are really important at they're basically the good bacteria in our gut, our microbiome, and we know that our microbiome is crucial for our whole body health, not just for our hormones, but our immune system, our energy production, and all of these things. So some people cannot tolerate fermented foods, myself included. So when I was mentioning about the histamine intolerance, this includes fermented foods. So at first I was down in the sauerkraut and drinking the kombucha and wondering why my skin was absolutely terrible, and I felt anxious and horrible all day long. And it's because I can't tolerate fermented, like kind of bacterial fermented foods. Therefore, I have to stick with supplementation. However, some strains of supplements and probiotics are histamine increasing. So if you are histamine intolerant, it's important that you work with a practitioner to find out which probiotics to use and what diet approach to take, because it can become really restrictive if you're not careful. And the reason that gut health is so important for our skin is because I believe that all health begins in the gut. You probably heard that old saying, but it's definitely true. And our immune system's located in our gut. So if there's kind of inflammation or fire in that area, then that's just going to spread throughout the whole body. And it is a huge connection between the gut and the skin, as well as the gut and the brain. So the gut, if you aren't sure what's driving your acne, you've done all the other things, it's likely that there's something going on in the gut. This can be a bacterial overgrowth, it could be a yeast overgrowth, a parasite, or just dysbiosis in general. So you've not got enough good bacteria compared to bad bacteria. And gut-friendly foods, again, this is different for everyone based on intolerances, but some of the main things that you should be focusing on is really easy to digest nutrient-dense foods like soups, bone broths, stews, smoothies, and herbs and spices, again, like ginger and turmeric. These are really anti-inflammatory and great for promoting digestive health, along with prebiotic fibers. So if you know that you haven't got any bacterial imbalances or pathogens in your gut, then you should incorporate more prebiotic foods. If you do have some sort of infection or find that you're really gassy or in pain after increasing probiotics or prebiotics, this is an indicator that you have something going on in your gut that needs investigating. Prebiotic foods are going to be fibers found in broccoli, cabbage, kale, leeks, onions, shallots, and garlic. And again, organ meats, I'm just a lover of organ meats because they're packed with nutrients like B vitamin, zinc, and vitamin A, which are really important for skin health. I like to recommend them once or twice a week, and my personal favourite is chicken livers. If you just cannot stomach them at all, even in something like a homemade pate, then you can actually make something called liver pills, or you can take an organ complex. You can just Google that, but make sure, again, it's the highest quality you can get and always organic, because the liver is the place where toxins are stored and it's the place where nutrients are stored too. So if you're eating the liver of a sick animal, you can imagine how toxic that's going to be from the medication it receives and the food quality that it's been eating. It's not going to be great for your health. And lastly, you need to make sure that you're having a bowel movement every single day at least once. This is important because if we're not eliminating from the bowels, like I mentioned before, it's going to be coming out through the skin, and it can also help to recirculate hormones in the body if we're not eliminating them through our bowels. So what happens is our liver packages up all our used hormones like testosterone and estrogen when they've been used, and it sends them out through the colon in order to be eliminated through the stool. But if we're constipated, or if we've got an overgrowth of bacteria in the colon, this can cause the hormones to be unpackaged and recirculated again within the body, leading to symptoms of hormone excess. So with testosterone, that's going to be the acne, the hair loss, and the hair growth on the body and face. And with estrogen, that's going to be the heavy, clotted, painful periods and PMS symptoms. Another lifestyle factor for PCOS acne is going to be stress. We've probably all had the experience of getting a huge breakout or zit if we've got an important presentation or a party or an event to go to, especially after a stressful maybe exam week at school or uni. That's because stress can directly upregulate the sebum production, promote inflammation, promote blood sugar and insulin. So we want to avoid it at all costs, but obviously that's not always achievable and practical living in the 21st century. So we need to manage the stress things that we can control, and then manage the other things that we don't have as much control on, and maybe change our perception about those things. So you probably heard me say all the time, but stress isn't just psychological. So it's not just about worrying and thinking about the bills and hating your job. It can also be physical. So I've already mentioned over exercising, too high carbohydrate intake for your needs, dehydration, nutrient deficiencies. These are all physical stresses on the body. Environmental stressors are going to be those environmental toxins found in plastics, found in endocrine disrupting chemicals in your skincare products. Financial, that speaks for itself, and biochemical, that could be your blood sugar levels aren't stable. That could be that your liver detoxification pathways aren't working properly. So when I'm mentioning stress, it's important to look at all those things, not just whether you're stressing out about your job or your relationship, because these things are important, but it doesn't just end there. The stress relieving activities, this is different for everyone, because some people love meditation, they swear by it every single morning. Some people absolutely hate it. So you need to find something that works for you, that you love and enjoy doing. And it should be something that you feel like time just passes by quickly. That's when you know that it's a good thing for you. This could be yoga, breathing exercises, reading a book. It could be an Epsom salt bath several times a week with some essential oils in there. It could be dancing, getting out into nature. It all really depends, but make sure you're doing something every single day to kind of wind down from the day and just manage your stress bucket. Changing your mindset is also super important for hormones, but also just everyday life. And it'll really, if you can start to practice this in your younger years, then it's just going to benefit you into your adulthood too, and your later years. So it's easier said than done, but you really need to stop stressing about your skin. And I know if you probably would have told me that when my skin was at the worst, I would have punched you, but it is really important, because if you're just fixated on that, and every single morning waking up and looking in the mirror and seeing if there's a new spot there, or being really self-conscious and not going out the house and really not eating certain food because you're scared it's going to break you out, then that's just such a stress on the body. And that stress is going to pump out the blood sugar, the insulin, and the stress hormones from the adrenal glands too. So as much as you can, just try and relax about things, maybe think about the positive things in your life, and when you're working on addressing all these things, just be happy with that. Just think that you're doing your best, and if you really do need help and support and to take the stress off yourself, then you can work with someone else. And this can really, I found this by working with someone else, it really took the pressure off me and allowed me to just follow a protocol and let them know what I was going through and let them see things from a different perspective, because it can be hard to see what's going on with your own health when you're kind of in it. It's like you can't see the woods for the trees, basically. And you can also practice gratitude. So think of all the positive things that are going on in your life. Keep a journal, or just keep a mental note of what you're thankful for. So your family, your ability to afford food and clean water, the fact that you're not living with a disease that's irreversible and life-threatening, even though it can be a terrible thing to deal with. Acne is not life-threatening, neither is PCOS, so these things are reversible, so you've got that benefit to think of too. And when it comes to just work and day-to-day life and cleaning your home and things like that, just changing your mindset to, rather than, oh my god, I have to do this today and I've got all these things to do, I'm so busy, that's just stressing your body out unnecessarily. So rather than saying I have to do this, change that to I get to do this, I am physically capable, I've got a job to go to that I earn money at, and when it comes to washing up the dirty dishes, think I actually have food to eat and plates to eat off and a home to live in. So I find that really helpful for myself. And lastly, just slow down. If you live in a fast-paced lifestyle, this can really be kind of a masculine way to go about things. And I know I mentioned that male to female hormone balance, and a lot of different philosophies and health practices like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine speak a lot about the male and female hormones and how it's related to femininity and masculinity. And if we're constantly living in that go lifestyle and the hustle lifestyle and not sleeping and working all day long and not having any fun in our life, then that can really bring out the masculinity in the person. And instead we want to slow down and embrace more of that femininity to try and calm the adrenal glands and to get the hormones back in balance. That might sound a little bit woo-woo to you, but it's definitely a thing. So something that you could pay attention to and start to incorporate for sure. Okay, so now on to some natural androgen blockers that you can try as another lifestyle tip for PCOS acne. The first one would be zinc. All of these things help to block that enzyme 5-alpha reductase that I spoke of that converts the testosterone into dihydrotestosterone DHT, which is a really potent form of testosterone that might be occurring in you. However, these things are generally safe to take if you're not sure if you're going down that pathway, apart from, I'd say, the DIM, the bottom one, the diindole methane supplement. If you're going to go down the supplement route, then this can really lower estrogen levels and change the estrogen detox. So you need to know through functional lab testing, if possible, before taking this, because it can really lighten periods. It could even stop periods in some cases. So only go with that one if you know that you're promoting this DHT and you have high estrogen levels based on a test result. So starting off with zinc, just a general mineral that's great for hormones in general. It helps to promote the formation of certain hormones and the excretion and metabolism of hormones. So you can stick with dietary sources like red meat, organ meats, nuts and seeds and eggs, or you could go down the supplement route. I'll come on to specifics on the next slide. But yeah, stick with food first, and then you may require a supplement as an additional thing, or you could just get a general high quality multivitamin that will have some zinc in there too. Reishi mushroom, this could be bought as a supplement. All of these things should be discussed with your practitioner first before adding in, because it might be contraindicated with other medications or health conditions that you have. But if you're just adding it to your drinks or buying the 4-sigmatic mushroom coffees or mushroom elixirs, more like, so that we're avoiding the caffeine. So they have mushroom elixirs that are great tasting and really beneficial. But if you're going to go for supplements and the potent forms of these things, that's when you should speak to your practitioner. Nettle root, again, you can consume this as herbal tea really safely. Nettle tea, a few cups a day is really helpful. Saw palmetto, again, speak to your practitioner before taking this to determine if you have the 5-alpha reductase issue. This is often found in prostate formulas because of that detoxification of testosterone that's the problem. So if your practitioner recommends you a prostate formula for your PCOS and you're thinking, what the hell, I don't have a prostate, then it's only the herbs inside that are the thing that we want. Spearmint tea, this is really helpful for PCOS acne and oily skin because it helps to reduce androgen levels and studies have shown that 2 cups a day have been scientifically proven to reduce testosterone in the bloodstream. So that's a really simple one to add in. Spearmint tea or nettle tea, you can kind of combine them together. And lastly, dim, I've spoken about that one. And you can actually just get dim from cruciferous vegetables, so it's just a potent compound found and derived from cruciferous vegetables, specifically broccoli. So just adding more broccoli to your diet, and broccoli sprouts are even more potent than broccoli on its own. So buying or making some fresh broccoli sprouts can be really, really helpful. Okay, so some of my favorite non-toxic skincare products, and I have a whole blog post on this, so you can head over to my website and read kind of which brands that I use and how I use them and how they benefit me. But the kind of basics that I like to recommend is a gentle cleanser or face wash. You don't want to be scrubbing away and using peels and harsh cleansers that foam and kind of strip your face squeaky clean. We want to avoid that. Use like a non-toxic facial cleanser that's really gentle. Try not to wear a lot of makeup throughout the day to let your skin breathe. And I know that can be hard if you're suffering with acne. So maybe use a lighter foundation or some mineral powder, natural organic mineral powder, instead of thick, heavy, conventional foundations and products. And when you're off work or when you're at the gym, make sure you're not wearing any makeup as much as possible. The next thing is going to be facial oils. So you may be thinking, well, I'm not going to put oil on my face when my face is already like an oil slick and I've got clogged pores. But actually you can use facial oils like jojoba, argan oil and grapeseed oil. These are all lighter versions that act as, they look similar to sebum in the skin. And you've probably realized that you can't cleanse oil, like say if you have an oily pan or a greasy pan, if you were to just use water with that, then it's not going to work. Whereas if you add some sort of oil or some detergent, that's going to help to clean it a lot better. And it's similar to the skin. If we're just adding water to our skin, then that's not going to clear out the pores. But if we use like for like, if we use oil, that can help to cleanse oil from the skin. And oftentimes when the skin is overproducing oil, it's because it's dehydrated. So if we're constantly washing our face 3 to 4 times a day and stripping it bare and stripping it dry, so it's all cracked and inflamed, then the skin produces more oil to try and compensate for that. And that can be a vicious cycle, but you can really nip it in the bud by starting to use facial oils, either as an oil cleansing method. So you take your makeup off with these types of oils by rubbing it into the skin and then using a hot flannel to kind of steam your face a little bit, and then making sure that you're removing all of the product from your face. And then you can use a little bit of this oil as a moisturizer or in replace of moisturizer. Clay masks, I love using the Aztec Healing Clay. As you can see in the picture, you can get this on Amazon. And I mix this with apple cider vinegar and leave it on as a face mask for 10 to 20 minutes, a couple of times a week. And it really helps to draw out impurities from the pore. People also use it on their hair or their armpits as like a cleansing mask there as well, but I've not actually tried that one yet. You can also try a homemade apple cider vinegar toner using 50% filtered water to 50% raw apple cider vinegar. This needs to be unpasteurized apple cider vinegar that contains something called the mother. So it's like the bacteria is still in there. That's the beneficial part of things. And I'd start with kind of a 1-to-1 ratio, but then you can kind of add more apple cider vinegar or less if you find that it's irritating or you need a little bit something stronger. And just wiping this over your face with a cotton pad after cleansing in the evening, just to really rebalance the microbiome on your skin and reduce some of that oiliness and clean some of the pores out. I find this so helpful with my skin. And lastly, as a spot treatment, I would recommend not squeezing your spots. I've been guilty of this in the past, and it definitely leads to more scarring and can push some of the pus in further into the skin, making things worse. So try to let them be, as horrible it can seem at the time, and you can be really self-conscious. It's better to have a white head than have a scar for 6 more months of your life. So I like to use a spot treatment if the spot has burst naturally on its own, or I have picked one, or it's like a whitehead. I mix a combination of raw manuka honey with some turmeric, so it's going to stain things. So put a towel down on your pillow when you go to bed, and try not to spill it everywhere all over your work counter, because that's just going to stain everything orange. And you can just dab a little bit of the mixture onto your spots. I put mine in a little tub and then just use that whenever I get a blemish, or whenever I get a scab or something on my body, and it really helps to kind of heal things. Manuka honey is a really amazing healer. It's used in certain hospitals around the world, and it's antibacterial, and turmeric is anti-androgenic, so it helps reduce that DHT in the skin, and it's also one of the highest anti-inflammatory spices. That's why we should be eating it internally too, but it works great on the skin. Okay, onto supplements, and I do have another blog post on this kind of thing in more detail about why they help, certain dosages, things like that, contraindications, so you can check the full post out on my website. But the top 5 supplements that I recommend for most people with PCOS acne is going to be a methylated B complex, because B vitamins are really important for skin cell turnover and also liver detoxification. So that phase 1 and phase 2 has a high nutrient need for B vitamins, and it can be quite deficient in the diet, these B vitamins, because we're not eating a lot of the foods or enough of the foods that we need. And the reason that they're methylated is because synthetic versions like folic acid you may have heard of, or poor quality ones that you can just buy in the supermarket or the drugstore, aren't bioavailable in the body and can actually be filled with a lot of fillers and not so great preservatives and things if they're that lower quality. So aim for the practitioner, high quality brands that provide methylated B complex. One note on B vitamins in particular is that taking really, really high doses of B12 and also biotin can drive acne in a lot of people, and I found this myself. If I was to take a B12 supplement or a biotin supplement on its own, you sometimes find biotin in hair, skin and nail supplements, and if you find that they're not working for you, it's kind of a problem, because they're meant to help your skin, but biotin and B12 can actually break people out quite a lot. So make sure it covers at least the recommended daily intake that's found in the supplement, but nothing like super high doses of those two. Next thing would be a high quality probiotic. As I mentioned earlier, some people have issues with histamine possibly, so specific supplements and probiotics may not be helpful. So it's important to work with a practitioner who can recommend some high quality non-histamine producing probiotics. My favourite is Megaspore. It's pretty safe across the board, but I think you do need kind of a practitioner to prescribe this for you. And the third one is a pure high quality fish oil that contains 1 to 3 grams of EPA. So if you look on the back, it shouldn't just contain 1 to 3 grams of fish oil in general, because that could be just the other oils found in fish oil, but we want that active EPA dosage of 1 to 3 grams for the anti-inflammatory benefits that we're looking for. And it needs to be really high quality, because fish these days aren't in the best state as they are because of the quality of the oceans. So we want ones that have been regulated and tested for heavy metals and pollutants and dioxins. And if it smells really fishy, or you get burps after consuming it, like fishy burps or reflux, that's a big sign that it's actually rancid. So it should be kept in the fridge anyway, and you shouldn't have it more than a couple of months opened. And make sure it's purchased from a really reputable source that specialise in fish oil. Again, zinc, I've already mentioned, so a dose of 15 to 30 milligrams is probably generally safe for everyone, depending on your medications, etc. But in order to go for those higher therapeutic doses, it's important to balance it with copper, not to take it for too long, and to test and see if you're actually deficient before just throwing things in, because Same with anything, too much of a good thing can still throw your body out of balance. Same with water. Water's good, but more's not better because it could actually kill you. That's just a positive thought. And last supplement would be vitamin D3. And it's important to test your levels of vitamin D before taking anything higher than 2000 IU. That's really just a bog standard general dosage, the 1 to 2000 IU. And the reason is that vitamin D can actually store in the body and can become toxic when too high. A lot of women with PCOS are deficient in vitamin D, but we really need to see where you're at in order to recommend a suitable dosage to get your levels where they need to be at. And for everyone in the UK, NHS levels for vitamin D are going to be at minimum 20, and around 20 to 60 is considered fine, but in kind of functional medicine nutrition world, we're aiming for 80 to 120 around that range. So you can see the massive difference. So if you've been told that your vitamin D levels are fine and you're in the normal range, then with every other test too, you may be told that you're fine, like with the testosterone or with your thyroid. You need to ask for the results and get them checked over by a functional medicine practitioner or nutritional therapist to see if they are actually at optimal ranges, because the people going for lab tests are the ones that they use the information to determine the reference ranges. And who are the people who are going for lab tests? They're often sick people. So that's not a great sign. We want to be having optimal healthy levels of our nutrients. And you can see the disclaimer at the bottom: speak to your health practitioner before adding in any of these supplements, as they may be contraindicated. And finally, I want to touch on some of the lab tests. So I recommend getting some of them through your doctor or your GP if possible. And they're going to be like the conventional blood tests that you would usually get on a regular visit to your GP. And you can explain that you're going through some hormonal symptoms and your cystic acne, you're trying to get to the root cause of things. Ideally, we'd want them to test all of the things that I've listed. However, it's not likely, especially if you're not working with someone, because they're just going to kind of push these aside and not really take any notice of them, because I don't think they know what to do with the results. If you were positive or negative for something, they kind of have just a standard approach of birth control pill, antibiotics, and metformin for PCOS. And the main things that it's going to be testing is your blood sugar regulation, so your insulin, blood sugar levels, to see if insulin resistance is playing a part in this. Your hormones, so your estrogen, your androgens, your FSH and LH, nutrient stores, I've already mentioned vitamin D, B12, and then iron, ferritin, and folate too. And also your thyroid, because as I mentioned before, thyroid imbalances can be a hidden cause of PCOS symptoms. So if you're also dealing with things like weight problems, hair loss, feeling cold, tired, depression, constipation, these can all be symptoms of a sluggish thyroid. But typically doctors usually only test the first measure that you can see on there, which is TSH, and that's only the brain hormone. So it's not actually testing what's coming out of the thyroid gland, which is something that we need to see. And also antibodies as well. So there's a condition known as Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition that's really common in women with PCOS, and they're kind of really connected. And if you have PCOS that's uncontrolled and you're not getting to the root cause of things, this can lead to this autoimmune condition of the thyroid in the future. Private tests, these are going to be the functional tests that I use a lot in practice that you won't be able to get through the NHS or your GP. They won't even know what they are. And these are really helpful in diving even deeper into the different systems of the body. The 4 main tests that I use when it comes to PCOS and PCOS acne are going to be, first thing, a Dutch test. So I was mentioning the hormone test that checks the metabolites and the 5-alpha DHT in the urine. And it also looks at the impact of stress. So if you're not sure whether you've got that adrenal PCOS or that insulin type or the inflammatory type, this one can really help us determine, along with some symptom history and your conventional blood work, this can really help to determine your PCOS type and kind of what's driving your symptoms. The good thing about it is also check some of your nutrient status as well, your antioxidant levels and your melatonin. So if your sleep's good, if you've got enough nutrients on board, and your neurotransmitters, so your brain chemicals. It is probably one of the tests that I use the most, and I absolutely love it. It is a bit expensive, probably around £300 to order, 200, 300, but it gives you, I think, a 14-page report, and just the information is invaluable. And everyone who's done it has always said, I can't believe I was worrying about how much it costs, because it's provided so much help and insight, and it's saved us time and money in the long run. The next one would be a GI map stool test to investigate gut health, because gut health is so important for whole body health, hormone health and skin health. So it would check if you have any bacterial overgrowth, parasites, yeast, candida, as can the SIBO breath test. So that would check more of the small intestine, whereas the stool test checks more of the large intestine. And SIBO is highly correlated with acne, because if there's bacteria in the small intestine where you absorb some of your food, the majority of your food, if the bacteria are there creating inflammation, then it's going to promote leaky gut, and it's going to prevent you absorbing a lot of your nutrients needed to build healthy skin. And finally would be a fatty acid profile to see if you've got enough of the anti-inflammatory fats omega-3 compared to the pro-inflammatory fats omega-6. So that's everything for now. I hope you found this really helpful. And if you've got any further questions or you want further support from me, then definitely check out my website. I've got tons of resources and free content on PCOS and hormonal acne. My Instagram, every single day I'm educating and sharing inspirational posts and ideas on how you can improve your health naturally and your hormones. Facebook, again, you can follow me on there. I have a podcast, Hormones in Harmony, that I've recently started in 2019 that can help you dive into specific hormonal conditions and how to overcome them naturally using diet, lifestyle, herbs and natural practices. You can email me your questions, or if you want to book in for a free 30-minute PCOS troubleshooting call, that you can get in touch and we can provide you with the information to set you in the right direction and find out how working with me could help you overcome your symptoms naturally. So that's all for now. Thank you so much for joining with me, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.